Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to do a ghosting technique, but with stencils. Now, a ghosting technique may be something you've seen done with stamps before, but I'm going to do it with my stencil instead, and it's going to give it this kind of cool highlight area. Some of the supplies that I'll be using is I think it's the Easter Sentiments stamp set. I'm going to use that spring word die and then the layered carrots stencil. So the first thing I'm doing is taking this Kraft Cardstock and I added some repositionable tape to the back to kind of secure it down onto my magnetic work surface. Now the layered carrots stencil from Pretty Pink Posh is a 3-piece layering stencil. So this one is a little bit more time consuming versus if you were to use a single stencil, but I thought this was a really fun experiment to try with the layering stencil. I'm starting with the first layer of the stencil, which is listed down in the bottom corner of the stencil. It says a letter A, and I'm coming in with Unicorn Pigment Ink. This is a white pigment ink from Hero Arts, and I'm going to apply this over the open areas of the stencil. Now, this blending brush I'm using is designated for white pigment ink because it is so thick. And once I have that whole area covered, I'm going to lift off the stencil. Now, pigment ink can stay wet for a little while, so I'm going to come in with my heat tool and try and just dry that so I don't smear it. I'm going to bring in the second layer of the stencil, which is going to add the carrot tops, and I'm doing the same thing, just going over those open areas with my blending brush and the white pigment ink. So this white pigment ink is really what is going to create our ghosting effect. Now I want to use these stencils again, so I'm cleaning them off just over a rag here that I have and some rubbing alcohol that I keep in a spray bottle. And I just wipe those clean. I'm going to bring it back over to my work surface and line this first layer back up, but I'm going to shift it just ever so slightly on one side. So just pick a side, right or left, just shift it ever so slightly. And now I'm going to come in with my dye ink. So for this one, I'm using the Gina K Designs Sweet Mango, and I'm going to apply that color over the open areas using a flat blending brush. Now what this is going to do is it's going to leave that highlight area just a little bit from that white ink that I previously put down. The white ink is also help giving me a true color of orange. A lot of times if you try an ink blend on colored cardstock or craft cardstock with your dye inks, it doesn't always give you a very true color. It gives it kind of more of a unique look. But this time I wanted to really try and get these colors to show through, and that white ink is helping do that. So after I did that first layer, I'm coming in with fresh asparagus and going over that second layer of the stencil to add the toppers to my carrots. Then after I have that done, I remove the second layer, and this really gives it a true orange and green color to it. So not only do we have that highlight, but we have these great colors coming through in the Kraft Cardstock. Now I'm bringing in the third layer of the stencil. And this one, you notice I didn't do any white with this one because this just adds details to your carrots. So I used Tomato Soup from Gina K Designs, which is a darker color to add those little details to the carrots. So I think this turned out really fun for a background, but I'm going to just kind of step it up a little bit. I'm taking some water and adding it to my work surface along with this bleed-proof white ink. I just kind of picked some up out of the jar, and I'm going to mix that just a little bit with the water just so I have enough of a consistency to be able to flick it onto my background. And the way I'm doing this is I'm applying that ink to an acrylic block, and I'm going to flick this onto the cardstock. By doing it on the block, I'm getting really, really fine splatters of ink. And then I can also take my paintbrush and just kind of tap that too. But when you tap your paintbrush, sometimes you get a little bit bigger splatter than you may want. So either way will work great. Now for the front of my card, I'm going to use the Scallop Frames from Pretty Pink Posh, and I die cut out that smaller one from some white cardstock about 3 or 4 times and layering it together with some liquid glue. I'm working on a little piece of a silicone mat just to kind of help catch any excess glue that might seep off the side. And then I can attach this to the front of my card, which I cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but in landscape mode. So now I'm taking that Happy Spring shadow die. I die cut out the shadow from white, and I die cut out the word spring from some Papaya Cardstock from Hero Arts. Die cut it out twice and layered that together for a little bit of dimension. I found a really fun smaller sentiment that would work well with the spring word, and this is coming off of the Birthday Sentiments stamp set. So I really will go through my stamps and just look at some of the smaller words that are on there and just stamp them out and trim them down. So this says, wishing you a wonderful birthday. I just want the words wishing you a wonderful. So after I stamped that out on white cardstock, I'm taking this over to my mini paper trimmer and I'm going to trim that down into a thin strip. I also cut out a few other pieces of scratch paper that are about the same size as this, so I can layer my sentiment together. I would rather layer it together with cardstock versus foam strips or foam squares whenever I can. So I just add that liquid glue to it and trim off the excess. I think I layered it about 2 or 3 times. Now I'm getting an idea of how my card is going to look. This right here with the sentiment would look really perfect, but I really wanted to add this cute little bunny from the Easter Sentiments stamp set. I just had stamped and colored it off screen really quick. I'm adding that cute little carrot to the bunny's hand, and I want this to go on the front of my card. So I'm kind of scooting that word spring over a little bit. But then my smaller sentiment here just kind of seemed off, like too long. So I trimmed it, and so I cut it off at wishing you, and then I have the words a wonderful in 2 separate lines. Now for the word spring, I'm adding some foam squares, thin foam squares, to the back of that. And I need to add my bunny first because that's going to go behind the word spring. So that one I added with a tape runner off on the right-hand side as far as I can go. And then back to the left-hand side, I'm adding the word spring, so it's going to kind of overlap my bunny. Now I can add my smaller sentiments here at the top, just using some liquid glue, which is going to give me a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that they are straight. Then I'll set something heavy on there and let it sit for about a minute so that it's nice and dry and not going to move if I happen to bump it. So that finishes off my card project. If you've never tried this type of ghosting technique before, I really recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It can be done on dark colored cardstock or craft colored cardstock, and it's great for really any type of occasion. All of my supplies will be listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again real soon.